Larry Namer was on stage with us. He created the E-Channel, sold it for $1 billion. He is the only billionaire that I know of who, by becoming wealthy, just hired smarter people all around him. He never worked himself to death. He never worked 16 hours a day. He just hired the smartest people possible and was very humble about the whole thing. Everyone else who's a billionaire that I know of who says, sleep enough, be healthy, don't work really, really, really hard, said that after working really, really hard. It makes people think, did you become a billionaire because you grinded so hard and now you're enlightened? You don't have to work as hard. So you have all this momentum. Everyone knows who you are. You know, it's an interesting situation, but Larry Namer is an example of someone who just works smart. One of the best books you can read is Tillman Fertitta's book, Shut Up and Listen. Instead of summarizing these books real quick, for time's sake, I'm just going to show the title and really recommend that you read them here. But I wanted to reemphasize this one because it's such an easy read and there's such condensed knowledge and insight here. Steve Schwarzman mentioned it earlier. Number one takeaway was the octopus model of having a really strong core and then developing these tentacles that go out, but they make the octopus stronger, and that you get information from here and it helps over here. The whole body can change shape based on what the animal is sensing, and you don't get that if you have only one element to your business in one industry with one perspective. It's not as multifaceted understanding of what's going on in the economy or in your industry. Mark Cuban's book, number one takeaway was that business is really a 24/7 game, and you basically have to study your niche more than everyone else and just know it cold. Larry Namer was on stage with us. He created the E-Channel, sold it for $1 billion. He is the only billionaire that I know of who, by becoming wealthy, just hired smarter people all around him. He never worked himself to death. He never worked 16 hours a day. He just hired the smartest people possible and was very humble about the whole thing. Everyone else who's a billionaire that I know of who says, sleep enough, be healthy, don't work really, really, really hard, said that after working really, really hard. It makes people think, did you become a billionaire because you grinded so hard and now you're enlightened? You don't have to work as hard. So you have all this momentum. Everyone knows who you are. You know, it's an interesting situation, but Larry Namer is an example of someone who just works smart. And I'm sure he worked hard, quote unquote, but not the 12-hour, 16-hour days that a lot of people associate with being super successful. Grant Cardone, he spoke on stage at our events a few times, and the number one thing that stands out to me after reading his books is just being obsessed about your mission and being doggedly persistent. You can see that through all of his writings, all of his success. So that's something I've taken away from him. Don Winter, had a 2-hour meeting with him recently. He's under 40 years old, manages $6 billion in assets. And for him, it's all about being an excellent leader, about being very consistent, very strategic, lots of detailed planning. And he's just a very steady business professional. And he's created enormous wealth for himself at a young age, but also for all of his investors as well. Howard Marks is someone I wanted to mention during this presentation because of where the economy is at. He wrote a book called The Most Important Thing. Number one takeaway I got from this book, which is better than I thought it would be, is that when the market's getting bad and people stop investing as quickly, which is where we are right now, is when there'll be better opportunities because less people are buying, so you can get a discount, whether that's 10%, 25% off the normal price of something. When everything looks toxic and everyone thinks that you are really dumb to be investing right now, and it's the last thing you should ever do is put money in, that's when you get deals of a lifetime, he says. When everyone else thinks you have no sense investing right now is when you get amazing deals. And I thought that was really interesting and timely advice for where we are in the economy. I interviewed Tony Robbins, and he said he made $400 million off of one transaction because of who he was hanging out with. This is what Family Office Club is all about. It's what billionaires.com is all about. I don't know what is going to come from interviewing 100 billionaires, but I think only good things. Tony also mentioned that when you go into owner mode and not operator mode, and you're not turning the cranks yourself, but you're working on the system, he said that he works less hard now with billions in revenue across all of his 110 companies than he did when he did 10 million a year in revenue, because he was turning all the cranks. So he elevated into owner mode and everything changed.